I found him at dawn, the 70-year-old, crouched low over a tomato plant that had no business looking that healthy. His fingers were dark with soil, and next to his knee sat a cracked mug that still held the day's first coffee, grounds and all. He saw me staring at the trash in his hand, and he smiled like a man who had just won a quiet bet against the entire gardening industry. He was holding 3 things I had thrown away that very morning, and he was about to prove they were worth more than anything in a shiny bag. You have been lied to about what your kitchen waste can do, not by accident, not by ignorance, but because somewhere along the line, a corporation decided it was easier to sell you a sack of chemicals than to teach you that the real power was sitting in your own bin. Those 3 things,
nitrogen,
used the way
eggshells
he
for
uses
calcium,
them,
combine them with the
outgrow any
peels,
synthetic
and give your plants
fertilizer
a
you
proper
can buy.
chance.
And I am not talking about a small difference.
Unbelievable.
I am talking about
Look at
the
that
kind
one,
of
it's
growth
huge.
that makes
How did
neighbors
you manage
stop
this,
walking
James?
past your fence to take a second look. The first secret is right there in that mug. The coffee grounds he was holding had been dried for 2 days, spread thin on an old newspaper in the shade. That drying step is the entire
heavy,
battle.
packed,
Most people take
and
wet,
dry,
clumped
light,
ground straight from
crumbly.
the filter and
It's
bury
ready.
them. And then they wonder why their plant looks worse. Fresh grounds hold moisture so tightly that the soil around the roots turns into an airless swamp. And that swamp breeds a sour, moldy stench that tells you exactly what went wrong. The old man does not make that mistake. He waits, he spreads, he dries, and what he gets is a dark, crumbly material that feels almost like coarse sand running through his fingers. The texture is the first clue. Dried coffee ground should fall like fine gravel, releasing a faint, earthy smell that is more wood smoke than anything you would associate with breakfast. That crumble means the particles will mix evenly into the soil instead of clumping into suffocating pockets. He works them into the top few inches of earth, not deep, just a gentle turn of the trowel, and then he waters lightly, enough to settle everything without flooding it. He does not dig a trench. He does not layer. He simply blends, the way you would fold egg whites into a batter, light and patient. You still with me? Good, because this next part is where most gardeners quit. They see results on the second day and they panic, thinking they need to add more, and they bury a second load of wet grounds on top of the first. The old man calls that the fastest way to kill a good thing.
If it's not done
Slow
right,
release
it's
is the
not done
entire
at all.
point. The nitrogen locked in those dried grounds breaks down over weeks, feeding the plant steadily instead of in one chemical flood. One application, 2 weeks, that struggling tomato plant, the one with yellowing lower leaves, starts standing up straighter, its stems thickening visibly under the morning sun. That tomato plant straightening itself up under the morning sun. That is what happens when you treat coffee grounds like evidence, not trash. If you want to keep investigating what kitchen scraps can really do, subscribe now so you do not miss the next piece of the case file. Drop a comment while you're here. Have you ever seen dried coffee grounds turn crumbly like sand, or have you been burying them wet this whole time? I want to know whose side of the crime scene you are standing on. But here is the trap, and it is a nasty one. If you skip the drying and bury those grounds whole and wet, you are not feeding your plant. You are building an ant motel. The moisture draws them within hours, and the mold that follows turns your careful work into a sticky, sour mess that stinks worse than anything you have ever pulled out of a compost bin. I have seen it destroy the confidence of gardeners who were doing everything else right. The old man lost 11 years to that mistake before he figured out the drying step. And he will tell you about it with the flat, stubborn tone of a man who learned his lesson the hard way. He does not measure. He does not weigh. The ratio he uses is simple enough for anyone to remember. 1 part dried grounds to 3 parts soil. mixed until you cannot see a single clump. That is it. That is the entire first secret, the one hiding in your coffee filter every single morning. But coffee alone will not get you to 10 times the growth. The old man stood up, brushed the dirt off his knees, and pointed toward a small tin on the porch. It was full of eggshells that had been baked until they were brittle and then crushed into a powder so fine it looked like flour. That was the second thing I had thrown away that morning. Eggshells are the most misunderstood scrap in the entire kitchen. People toss them into the garden hole, expecting miracles, and then wonder why nothing changes. Whole shells take months to break down, and in the meantime, their sharp edges can cut young, tender roots as they try to push through the soil. The shell does not disappear, does not feed anything, does not do a single useful thing until it is crushed into a powder that fine. The old man bakes his shells first, spreading them on a tray in a low oven until they are dry enough to snap between 2 fingers, and the sound is a crisp, clean crack that tells you they are ready. The powder he produces has a chalky, alkaline scent, faint but unmistakable, like crushed limestone after a rain. He rubs a pinch between his thumb and forefinger, and it is so fine that it feels almost like silk dust. That texture is the difference between waste and medicine. Fine powder mixes into the soil completely, and within days, that calcium becomes available to the plant, strengthening cell walls, building stems that do not flop over in the first breeze. He sprinkles a teaspoon into each planting hole right at the root zone, where the developing plant can reach it immediately. You know that moment when your pepper plants stay pencil thin no matter what you feed them. That frustrating, helpless feeling when the leaves are green but the stems refuse to thicken. That is a calcium problem, and it is the exact problem the old man solves with that tin of white powder. 2 weeks after he worked that fine dust into the soil around a struggling seedling, its stem had doubled in thickness, standing firm instead of leaning, the whole plant carrying itself with a kind of stubborn pride. That is what a cell wall looks like when it has enough calcium. The neighbor across the fence had spent $40 on liquid fertilizer for the same plant, and hers was still pale and spindly. That tin of powder changed everything for his peppers. But the difference between his success and your potential failure is measured in microns, the size of the particles you produce. Subscribe so you're in the room when we break open the next Scrap's hidden case file, because the old man has a dossier on banana peels next, and you do not want to miss what he knows. Drop the words "calcium solved" in the comments if you've ever watched a stem firm up under your own hands after feeding it right. I want to know who else is on this investigation. The failure case for eggshells is quieter than the coffee grounds disaster, but it is just as deadly. Whole shells in the soil do not rot. They sit there, sharp-edged and useless, waiting for a root to scrape against them. And because they take so long to break down, the plant gets zero calcium during the critical first weeks of growth, the exact moments when it needs that mineral the most. The old man wasted 3 seasons before he understood that crush size mattered more than shell quantity. Now he bakes, he crushes, he powders, and he never buries another shell whole again. It is a lesson written in a dozen stunted tomato plants. So far we have 2 secrets, 2 scraps, 2 ways to turn your kitchen waste into an underground arsenal. The coffee feeds the leaves, the shell builds the stem, and together they have already transformed a struggling plant into something that looks like it belongs in a magazine. But the old man dug into his pocket and pulled out the third thing, brown and soft and slightly bent, and I caught my breath. It was a banana peel, and the way he handled it, the careful, deliberate way he held it up to the light, told me this was the one he had been saving for last. The third
I
secret
found a new
is
way
the
to
one
deal
that
with
shocks
pests.
everyone
Just watch
because
this.
it does not look like it should work at all. A banana peel left to sit on a counter turns from yellow to brown to a soft, sticky mess that smells sweet and then sour. That transformation is exactly why most gardeners fail with it. They bury the whole peel, and the fermentation that follows attracts fruit flies within hours, and the smell that rises from the soil is enough to drive anyone back to the store-bought bag. The old man does not bury whole peels. He chops them into small pieces, thin slivers no bigger than his thumbnail, and then he does something that seems almost wasteful. He mixes those pieces with the dried coffee grounds and lets them sit together overnight. That overnight rest
What happens
is
now?
the hidden magic. The coffee grounds absorb the excess moisture from the banana pieces, preventing the fermentation that ruins everything, and the mixture becomes a crumbly, dark blend that smells earthy instead of sour. The texture is slightly sticky, but dry to the touch, and the banana pieces are barely recognizable, just dark flecks scattered through the grounds. He places this blend at the bottom of a planting hole, covering it with a thin layer of soil before setting the seedling on top. The roots grow down into it, hitting that pocket of potassium and phosphorus exactly when they need it most. Mounting excitement now because this is where the old man's tomato plant went from healthy to absurd. The flower buds appeared within days, small green points at the ends of branches that had been bare and stubborn for weeks. The plant that had refused to bloom under synthetic fertilizer suddenly had more flowers than leaves, each one opening into a bright yellow star. And that is the third secret. Potassium drives flower and fruit formation. It is the difference between a plant that grows forever without producing a thing and a plant that loads itself down with fruit until the branches bend with the weight. This is the one people refuse to believe until they see it with their own eyes. The failure case for the banana peel is so common that it has become folklore in gardening circles. Bury the whole peel, water it, wait 3 days, and you will find a swarm of fruit flies and a smell so foul that it can clear a patio. The peel ferments. The fermentation draws pests, and the pests kill the plant's momentum. The old man watched this happen to his prized zucchini for 2 summers before he figured out the chop and mix method. Now that mixture of banana and coffee sits at the bottom of every fruiting plant he owns. And the difference is not subtle. It is the difference between a hobby and a harvest. Now, all 3 secrets are on the table, and the real test starts now. The old man took me to the back corner of his garden, where 2 identical tomato plants stood side by side. The one on the left had been fed with a 3-scrap method, coffee grounds, and eggshell powder, and that chopped banana mixture working together in the soil. The one on the right had been given exactly what the garden store recommended, a full regime of synthetic fertilizer measured to the milliliter and applied on schedule. The difference was impossible to ignore. The left plant was a fortress, dark green and thick-stemmed, covered in blooms and tiny green fruit. The right plant was pale, spindly, and sad, its leaves curling slightly at the edges. You just watched 2 plants with the same sun and water end up on opposite sides of the survival line. One was a spindly, curling mess on store-bought promises, and the other was a fortress built from scraps. Subscribe now because the next investigation is already breaking open. If you walk away without that button, you will be buying fertilizer again next season instead of cracking the case wide open. Drop the word fortress in the comments if you want your garden to look like the left plant, not the one the garden center sold you. The neighbor's reaction said it all. She leaned over the fence, squinted at the left plant, and blurted out, "How in the world did you do that?" That is the moment every gardener wants. The moment when someone else's eyes go wide because they cannot explain what you have done. The old man did not show her the coffee grounds or the eggshell powder or the chopped banana peel. He just smiled and said, "I stopped buying fertilizer." And the truth is, that's simple. All three scraps, used the way he uses them, create a soil environment that no synthetic product can replicate, because they feed the soil itself, not just the plant. The leaves on that left plant were so dark green they almost looked black in the evening light. And when you ran a finger along the stem, it was stiff and firm, not that soft, rubbery texture you get from over-fertilized plants. The smell of the soil around it was rich and dark, that deep, earthy humus scent that tells you life is working underground. Earthworms were visible in the top layer, evidence that the soil had become a living system instead of a sterile medium. And that is the combined proof. The three scraps working together, each one feeding a different part of the plant's growth, building a foundation no bag of chemicals can touch. Those three things, the ones you threw away this morning, just rewired your soil forever. The coffee feeds the leaves, the eggshell builds the stem, the banana drives the flowers, and together they turn a struggling plant into a fortress. The old man did not use any tricks, no expensive tools, no rare ingredients. He used decades of stubborn trial and error, the kind of knowledge that only comes from watching plants fail and fixing them one scrap at a time. And now you have the same knowledge he has. You can see the evidence in your own garden, in the next seedling you plant, in the flowers that appear where nothing bloomed before. Next time, we put the banana peel on a trial for potassium delivery speed, and you will not believe what happens after 48 hours when it is prepared the right way. But for now, look at your kitchen counter. The coffee grounds are drying, the eggshells are waiting, the banana peel is sitting there, brown and unassuming, packing the kind of power that makes a 70-year-old gardener smile. The only question left is whether you will bury them whole and repeat the mistake, or whether you will take the extra hour to do it the right way. Those three things you threw away just became the best investment you will ever make in your garden.